May 12, 1945. Kronach, Germany. 4 days after German surrender. 8-year-old Greta Weber hides in her basement while her mother peers through a crack in the boarded window. American troops are entering their town. Greta has been taught what this means. The black American soldiers are coming, and they're monsters. For years, Nazi propaganda depicted black soldiers as subhuman savages, rapists, murderers, destroyers of civilization. Posters showed grotesque caricatures. Radio broadcasts warned German women and children to flee or hide when black troops approached. Teachers told children that black soldiers would kill them. Greta's mother whispers, "Stay quiet. Don't make noise. They're here." Footsteps outside, knocking on the door. A voice in broken German, "Wir sind amerikanische Soldaten. Wir wollen helfen." "We are American soldiers. We want to help." Greta's mother doesn't respond. The knocking continues. The voice repeats, "We have food, medical supplies. We won't hurt you." After long silence, Greta's mother slowly opens the door. 3 American soldiers stand there, 2 white, 1 black. They're holding ration boxes. The black soldier smiles, kneels to Greta's eye level, offers a chocolate bar. He says in halting German, "Für das Kind." Keine Angst. For the child. Don't be afraid. Greta stares. This soldier is supposed to be a monster. He's supposed to hurt her. Instead, he's giving her chocolate and smiling gently. Over the following days, Greta watches black American soldiers throughout Kronach. They distribute food to starving civilians. They treat wounded Germans in field hospitals. They play with German children who were taught to fear them. They repair water systems and clear rubble. Within a week, Greta is playing with black soldiers who give her candy and make her laugh. Her mother, who hid in terror, accepts food from them and thanks them in broken English. The Nazi propaganda collapsed on contact with reality. German civilians were taught black soldiers were subhuman savages. They encountered human beings who treated them with kindness, despite having every reason not to. This pattern repeated across occupied Germany in 1945. Millions of Germans raised on racist propaganda met black American soldiers and discovered everything they'd been taught was lies. This is the story of that collision between propaganda and reality, and how German civilians, especially children, had their worldviews shattered by simple acts of human decency. If you want military history about propaganda destroyed by reality, subscribe right now. Drop a comment with where you're watching from. Black soldiers' kindness to German civilians broke Nazi ideology more effectively than any military defeat. Nazi propaganda about black people begins long before World War II. Hitler's racial ideology places Aryans at the top of a supposed racial hierarchy and black people near the bottom, slightly above Jews in Nazi pseudoscience. This ideology is taught in schools, broadcast on radio, published in newspapers, reinforced constantly. During World War I, France used colonial troops from Africa in combat against Germany. Nazi propaganda seized on this, depicting black soldiers as savage threats to German civilization. The propaganda claimed black troops committed atrocities against German civilians. Most allegations were fabricated or exaggerated. When World War II begins, Nazi propaganda intensifies anti-black messaging. As American forces prepare to invade Europe, propaganda focuses on black American soldiers specifically. The messaging is explicit and horrifying. Posters show grotesque caricatures, black soldiers depicted as ape-like, primitive, dangerous. One poster shows a black soldier with exaggerated features standing over a terrified white woman with the caption, "This is what the Americans are bringing." Radio broadcasts warn that black American soldiers are criminals released from prisons to serve in the military. They claim black troops will rape German women, murder German children, destroy German culture. School curricula teach children that black people are subhuman, biologically inferior, intellectually limited, culturally primitive. Teachers specifically warn children to hide from black soldiers because they're particularly dangerous. This propaganda serves multiple purposes. First, it reinforces Nazi racial ideology domestically. Germans must believe in racial hierarchy to accept the regime's other policies: Jewish genocide, Slavic subjugation, Aryan supremacy. Second, it motivates military resistance. Soldiers fighting to prevent black troops from occupying Germany might fight harder than soldiers just defending territory. Third, it prepares civilians for scorched earth policies. If black soldiers are subhuman monsters, then destroying infrastructure to deny it to them is justified. By 1945, millions of Germans have been exposed to this propaganda for years. Children like Greta have never known anything else. They grew up being taught that black people are dangerous savages. When American forces actually approached Germany in 1945, many German civilians believe the propaganda. They hide, flee, or prepare for the worst when black troops enter their towns. May 1945. American forces occupy German territory after surrender. The occupation involves multiple tasks: disarming German military, administering conquered territory, beginning denazification, feeding civilians, restoring basic services, preventing disease outbreaks. Black American soldiers participate in all these tasks. Approximately 10% of American forces in Europe are black, serving in quartermaster units, combat engineer battalions, port operations, transportation, and some combat roles. When black units enter German towns, civilians react with fear based on propaganda. Many hide, some flee, others prepare for violence they've been taught to expect. What they encounter instead: soldiers distributing food. Germany in May 1945 is starving. The Nazi regime's collapse destroyed food distribution systems. Many civilians haven't eaten adequately in weeks. Children are particularly malnourished. American forces distribute emergency rations to prevent mass starvation. This becomes one of the first interactions between German civilians and American soldiers, including black soldiers. Corporal James Wilson of the 666th Quartermaster Truck Company describes arriving in a small German town. Civilians were hiding. We could see them peeking through windows. We set up a distribution point for rations. Slowly, people came out. They were shocked we were giving them food instead of hurting them. The scenes repeat across occupied Germany. Black soldiers distribute food, set up field kitchens, provide medical care. German civilians, expecting violence, receive assistance instead. This is the story of propaganda destroyed by simple human decency. If you want military history about kindness changing hearts and minds, subscribe right now. Drop a comment with where you're watching from. Black soldiers' treatment of German civilians proved Nazi lies wrong. Children are particularly affected. They were taught to fear black soldiers, But discover these soldiers give them candy, play with them, make them laugh. Sergeant William Brown describes German children's reactions. At first, they'd run away crying. Their parents taught them we were monsters. After a day or two, once they saw we weren't hurting anyone, they'd approach cautiously. We'd give them chocolate or gum. Within a week, kids were following us everywhere, begging for candy, wanting to play. This pattern, initial terror followed by rapid acceptance, repeats throughout occupied Germany. German children unlearn years of propaganda within days through direct, positive experience. Adults take longer. Propaganda is harder to unlearn for those who've believed it for decades. But even skeptical adults can't ignore evidence. Black soldiers treating them humanely, providing food, helping rebuild, showing no violence. Some German civilians explicitly acknowledged the propaganda was false. They apologize to black soldiers, express shame at having believed lies, try to make amends through friendliness and cooperation. Others maintain cognitive dissonance. They rationalize that these particular black soldiers are exceptions. Most black people are still inferior, but these specific individuals are somehow different. This allows them to preserve ideology despite contradictory evidence. Most simply adjust their behavior without explicitly confronting ideology. They accept help from black soldiers, interact with them normally, stop hiding. The propaganda becomes irrelevant because reality contradicts it daily. The transformation of German civilian attitudes happens rapidly in most areas. Week 1. Fear and hiding based on propaganda. Week 2. Cautious emergence and acceptance of food aid. Week 3. Normal interactions, children playing with soldiers. Week 4. Genuine friendliness, cooperation with occupation authorities. This timeline varies by location and individual, but the general pattern holds across occupied Germany. Specific examples illustrate the transformation. Kronach, Bavaria. Greta Weber's town experiences typical progression. Initial hiding, then cautious food acceptance, then children playing with black soldiers within days. By late May, black soldiers are helping repair the town's water system while German civilians assist. Children follow them everywhere. Stuttgart. Black quartermaster units distribute supplies. German civilians initially avoid them. Within 2 weeks, civilians are helping unload trucks, working alongside black soldiers, sharing meals. One German woman whose son died fighting Americans brings soup to black soldiers working in her neighborhood. Frankfurt. Combat engineers from black battalions clear rubble and repair roads. German civilians expect forced labor. Instead, soldiers pay German workers to help, share rations, work cooperatively. The expected brutality never materializes. Germans begin volunteering to help. Individual relationships develop. Black soldiers befriend German families, are invited to homes for meals, help with repairs or farm work. German children adopt individual soldiers as favorites, following them, learning English words, playing American games. These relationships complicate denazification. Many German civilians who supported the Nazi regime now interact positively with the very people Nazi ideology taught them to hate. The cognitive dissonance is profound. Some Germans explicitly reject previous beliefs. They acknowledge propaganda was false, express shame at having believed it, actively oppose racism going forward. Others compartmentalize. They maintain racist ideology generally, while making exceptions for individual black soldiers they've befriended. These soldiers are good, but most black people are still inferior. This illogical position allows them to preserve ideology despite overwhelming contradictory evidence. Most simply stop talking about race. They interact with black soldiers normally, don't mention previous beliefs, act as if the propaganda never happened. This allows them to function socially without confronting their prior complicity in racist ideology. The U.S. military notices these patterns. After-action reports from occupation forces note that German civilian attitudes toward black soldiers improved dramatically within weeks of first contact. The reports attribute this to direct positive experience contradicting propaganda, desperate need for food overcoming prejudice, and black soldiers' professionalism and kindness. The German civilian encounter with black American soldiers has lasting effects. For German children like Greta, the experience fundamentally shapes their worldview. They learn that propaganda lies, that people aren't defined by race, that kindness matters more than ideology. Many carry these lessons lifelong. Greta, interviewed in the 1990s at age 52, remembers, "I was taught black soldiers were monsters. They gave me chocolate and made me laugh. That taught me more about propaganda and racism than any book could. I never trusted government messaging about inferior people again." For black American soldiers, the experience is complex. They're treating kindly the civilians of a nation that just fought a war based partly on racial ideology similar to what they face at home in America. Sergeant Brown reflects, "It was strange. These Germans believed Nazi propaganda about black people being inferior. We proved them wrong just by being decent human beings. But we were going home to America where we'd face similar racism. We were liberating people from Nazi ideology while living under American segregation." This irony isn't lost on the soldiers. They're fighting against Nazi racial ideology in Europe while living under American racial hierarchy. They treat German civilians with kindness, despite having every reason to be angry about the propaganda that dehumanized them. Some soldiers express bitterness about this contradiction. They're good enough to occupy Germany, but not good enough to vote in some American states. They're trusted to rebuild German infrastructure, but not trusted to attend white universities back home. Others focus on the mission. They're soldiers doing their jobs professionally, treating civilians humanely because that's the right thing to do, regardless of propaganda or ideology. The encounter between German civilians and black American soldiers demonstrates propaganda's fragility when confronted with reality. Years of Nazi messaging collapsed within weeks of actual contact because the messaging was based on lies that couldn't survive direct experience. This lesson has broader implications. Propaganda only works when people can't verify claims through personal experience. Once Germans met actual black soldiers and discovered they weren't monsters, the propaganda became obviously false. The German children who befriended black soldiers grew up in post-war Germany, many becoming part of the generation that rejected Nazi ideology and rebuilt Germany as a democracy. Their childhood experiences with kind American soldiers, including black soldiers who defied propaganda, contributed to that rejection. For black American soldiers, the experience provided bittersweet validation. They proved through simple decency that racist propaganda was false. German civilians who believed Nazi lies learned truth through positive interactions. But the soldiers returned to segregated America, where similar propaganda, not as extreme as Nazi messaging but based on the same false claims of racial inferiority, still shaped laws and social structures. The full integration of American military wouldn't come until the Korean War forced it in 1950–51. Black soldiers who showed kindness to German civilians in 1945 still served in segregated units, still faced discrimination, still couldn't access full citizenship rights. The German encounter with Black American soldiers stands as a historical moment when propaganda met reality, and reality won. Millions of Germans taught to fear and hate Black people learned through direct experience that the propaganda was lies. Simple acts of human kindness, sharing food, treating wounded, playing with children, destroyed years of ideological conditioning.